Before I start this video, I want to really thank 3D Printed Tabletop for really igniting my passion in 3D printing all the way back in 2018. I wouldn't be here without them. Like I said previously, I've been 3D printing on and off for half a decade at this point, but it has only really been since November 2021 that I've actually been selling miniatures as a currently part-time thing. How and why, you might be asking? Well, I'll be going over my progress from November 2021 to today, December 2022. The ups and downs of the business, my thought processes, and of course the real reason why you're here, the amount I've made selling miniatures to people globally in that time. So let's start with a little bit of knowledge downloading. I'll say that I'll be going over the most basic terms. If you want to know more in-depth level stuff of 3D printing, please check out 3D Printed Tabletop. First and foremost, what is 3D printing? Well, it's basically taking a raw form of material and transforming it into a finished form of material. There are really two forms of 3D printing at the consumer level. FDM, or as I like to call it, filament printing, which takes rolls of plastic, melts it, and then slowly builds the model over time, and SLA, or as I like to call it, resin printing, which uses UV sensitive resin and precise UV light to build a model over time as well. So I came to my first decision point, what type of printing I wanted to get into. Each has its pros and cons. Filament had a larger build area, which means I could put more on it at a time. But the major con of it was that it has zero small details, leaving it better suited for large terrain pieces. Resin, on the other hand, was more perfectly suited for my need. You get super precise detail, which is perfect for miniature, and this is the reason why I even had a resin printer. It was perfect to print off my D&D figures for my in-person games. So, with resin printing as my go-to, I now needed to find miniatures to sell. So how did I find my first few miniatures to sell? Well, you can't just Google 3D miniatures, take whatever shows up, and post them onto Etsy. This violates a few laws, the main one being copyright. Instead, you need to reach out to the artist and get a commercial license from them to be able to sell the miniatures commercially. This typically has a price tag attached to it. Good news for me is that Patreon and My Mini Factory exist. Most 3D modelers on Patreon have a limited tier for merchants, allowing you to have a commercial license as long as you pay for that tier and get their monthly releases of models. My Mini Factory has the same thing but called Tribes, and it works basically the same way. So it was here, during a cursory search of My Mini Factory, that I found my first creator to get a merchant license with, Clay Beast Creations. It was luckily at the time where there was only a couple of slots left on their early bird merchant slot. I quickly snapped it up and started my journey. I went with Etsy as my platform of choice. It already had a building customer base, and I didn't have to really set up my own web page, which was a huge plus. I quickly made my first listings and set them to be made to order, which means I have no stock laying around until I get an order and start printing it out. And then I waited, and waited, and waited. So here is the thing on how the subscription system works. For a set amount, I get to sell the miniatures that whoever I'm subscribed to created, along with their monthly releases. Now, I'm only subscribed to one person in November, and Clay Beast only releases about 4 sets of miniatures a month, which means, currently, I'm a new store with 4 listings to my name total, trying to compete with dozens of other stores, with anywhere from hundreds to thousands of different models. So, I needed more models, enough to at least have a variety of choices. The cool thing about My Mini Factory? The model maker can also just upload the models themselves to buy individually, so that's what I did. I bought a total of 8 different models from Clay Beast, ones that I thought had a pretty good chance of selling. Also, I went and broadened my horizons a bit and picked up another license from White Werewolf Tavern. It finally looked like buying these models from CBC had finally paid off, netting my first sale late into November. I had started my Etsy store on the 3rd, but my first actual sell was on the 27th. To be honest, there is no rush than the rush of selling your first item, and this person actually bought 2. So for the month of November, I made a grand total of $44.10 of revenue on 2 orders, which with the license and the model purchases puts me in the red for the month. In December, I got 4 more models from Claybeast Creations, as well as 10 more models from White Werewolf Tavern. I quickly post those up. For the total of December, I got 8 orders as I set my shop to vacation for the holidays. This month, I also did something slightly sneaky. Take some time to build up a library of models to sell and give people options, especially when paying for the higher price of a merchant subscription. So I bought a normal subscription to a modeler that in the future I was going to upgrade to the merchant tier. Now, I can't sell any of the models that they give me, but I can stockpile them up so when I have a critical mass of them, I can buy the merchant tier and post my backlog. I did this with the amazing Lord of the Print, one of the best Dungeons & Dragons modelers out there. For the total of December, I had a total of 8 orders for a total revenue of $254.90. In came the new year and I had to make a decision. I decided to cut White Werewolf Tavern from my shop, but I loved their design and style, they just weren't selling. Their monthly cost was twice as high as Claybeast Creations, and of the 10 things that I've sold so far, they've only sold once for $11.25 revenue. That, and for some reason it took half a month for that month's release to show up. So I canceled my sub and removed their postings from the shop. January was also a big month in-house-wise as I upgraded from my Elegoo Mars 2 printer to a larger build plate printer that was the Anycubic Photon Mono X for Christmas. The larger build plate allowed me to do those larger prints in one print instead of having to do multiple smaller prints with the Elegoo Mars 2. Orders continued to come in as I reached 13 for the month of January with the revenue total of $444.90, almost double of December's total. February was pretty stable as I pulled the trigger and upgraded to Merchant or Lord of the Print and added my backlog to my store. It's here that I had to refund my first customer. There's an issue with their Lord of the Print model that caused it to split open during transit, ruining the whole thing. They were nice and understanding of the cause, but still opted for a full refund instead of a replacement. Even with that issue, I did a total of 12 orders and brought in a revenue of $487.64 for the month. In March, I was coming up on my first major milestone, which was a total of 50 orders. At this point, I never really imagined I would be selling as much as I was, figuring that at most I would be selling 1 to 2 miniatures a month, let alone the 2 a week I was doing. It was also during this month that I decided to upgrade my cleaning and curing station, going from a plastic container filled with IPA and a nail curing station to an Anycubic large wash and cure station. This seriously increased my time on the back end of production. Though even with that thought process, March was a slow month, only getting 9 orders and making $366.06 in revenue. It was during April when something new caught my eye, which was the Ravenous Horde's Kickstarter on My Mini Factory. As it currently stood, I only had 2 commercial licenses, Claybeast Creations and Lord of the Print. And now, here was an offer for almost 100 plus different models, plus a year's commercials license for $150. I snatched that up as so fast that you wouldn't believe it. It was also during this month that I tried a different form of promoting my shop. I had gone back and forth with Etsy ads for a couple of months and wanted to try something new. A quick search on Fiverr, and for the month of April, I had an insane number of shop visits, but literally no changes in sale volume, as I ended the month with 10 orders and $411 worth of revenue. But I did finally hit that goal of a total of 50 orders. May was just another stagnant month at 10 orders and $357 in revenue. June and July were my worst months by far, as I had a vacation and then a corporate retreat back to back in July, which basically entailed no selling for the whole month of July. June, on the other hand, had the issue of my first failure of the screen of the printer. Due to a piece of cured resin being left, it punctured the film at the bottom of the vat and cured on the LCD screen. This made me put my store on an earlier vacation than I wanted, as I bought in a new screen and finished my current orders on the smaller Elegoo Mars 2 that I still had. The new screen didn't work because my printer was an older model. So with the vacation I already planned, I took a very large break from Etsy during these 2 months. It was during my retreat I felt invigorated to continue on Etsy again. I didn't want to sink more money into another screen that might or might not work, and I wanted to upgrade, seeing as printers advance a stage up every 6 months or so. So I bought a new Mono X 6K printer, getting even higher detail than the last, while now I can save up money to replace the previous screen. To do so, I also cut Lord of the Print from my shop as well, as it never really paid for itself over the last couple of months. So for the total of June and July, it was a total of 6 orders and $346 of revenue. August was another huge month for me, as I finally broke past that stagnant barrier I was at previously, getting 23 orders and $681.87 in revenue. Then, at the tail end of the month, I saw another opportunity to try and break once again into the D&D market. Clash of Gods had only one slot left on their tribe for their merchant cheer, so I went for it. This time, it seemed to have paid off, as it easily made back its cost, even to this day. September was one of the biggest months for my shop by far. Everything was turning up my way as order after order was coming in. It was a large milestone month for me, as I broke numerous goals and milestones. The first was to sell at least one item a day. The second was the biggest purchase in my shop's history at $325 in a single order, and the most revenue made in a month. All in all, September ended at 30 orders and $1,316 in revenue, almost double my previous best month, as well as hitting 100 orders sold. October was more of the same, constant orders day after day, as I ended the month at 28 orders sold and a revenue of $917. A year had passed, and here we are again at November. This month was both good and bad, as I had my second screen failure. This time, the screen just didn't want it to turn on in the morning. I was smart this time though, and double checked to make sure I was buying the correct screen. Problem was, it was going to be 8 to 12 business days for it to arrive. And November didn't slow down compared to October and September. In fact, it sped up. So there was only one thing I was going to be able to do. I bought the screen, and then I purchased another printer as the volume was beginning to be too much as well. With that, I updated my processing time and waited as more orders came, until finally the printer arrived and I set it to work. This allowed me to quickly put my backlog in a manageable order, as I ended the month as my best month ever at 61 orders, and by far my most amount of revenue at $2,386. And now on to this month. It has slowed down a bit at only 29 orders for the month, but a full revenue of $1,347. So far, no other major happenings, so I'm looking forward to the new year. I do have a couple of goals going forward. My first one is that while I'm currently handling stuff on Etsy, I would like to set up my own website so I don't have to deal with Etsy's fees on my stuff. I want to continue expanding on my licenses, as well as continue promoting them. Maybe on this channel if you guys actually enjoy this type of stuff and want to watch me on my journey. If you do want to do that, let me know in the comments below if you find this type of stuff engaging and interesting. And if you want to keep up with it, make sure to subscribe. I'm almost at 1,000, and I would be so awesome to get over that hump in the new year. Until next time, Villainous Foundry out.